It's so slow, but whatever. Hey guys, what's up? This is Ari in Beijing, with a really special guest today. He's an awesome dude by the name of Michael. He's got his own YouTube channel with a bunch of subscribers, and he's been learning a lot of languages. And so I think this interview is gonna be really great because we're gonna talk about how to learn whatever language you want to, hopefully as quickly as you can. So really super excited to have you on the show, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely, dude. So do you want to just like briefly, introduce yourself and like give kind of like a little intro on, who you are and how you started making these like polyglot videos on YouTube, and then the stuff you do and the languages you've studied and like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. So my name is Michael, and I run a YouTube channel called the Polyglot Files. I actually started learning languages. You'll have to excuse me because I'm sick. But I started learning languages when I was probably like 12 or 13 years old.
Okay.
I had like this dream, I guess, of being able to speak all these different languages, but I didn't really know how to get there. And then fast forward like 10 years and I was in university. I was studying French, Italian, and German. I took Persian, and that was kind of a disaster. And then I graduated university, and then I didn't really know what I wanted to do with these languages, but I know that I really, really like studying them, so I thought that I would create a YouTube channel to continue to be able to practice my languages and give other people tips on learning languages, and also to create some sort of community and have people give me feedback, but be able to give them feedback and stuff like that as well.
It's super interesting that you mentioned using the video channel as like a way to improve your own sort of language learning, because for me, like the whole, like, one of the big reasons why I do this is to sort of force myself to actually get better at learning languages. So like for anyone watching this, a piece of advice that I have, if like you really want to learn a language well, is just record yourself like speaking the language and just post it, or like commit to like a 30-day challenge and say like, hey, I'm gonna speak this, and it gives you some like social accountability to really force yourself to learn language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also really cool too because you can look back at your progress, I guess. Like I'm learning Russian from scratch right now, so I can look back at the first vlog that I did in Russian and see where I am now and be like, wow, like I've made some actual progress. And that's like, it's a little bit of an ego boost, I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of fun to be able to look back and see that. It's good inspiration to keep going.
Yeah, it's totally true. So you're from Canada, right?
Yeah, I'm from the Toronto area.
Cool. So in Canada, pretty much everyone learns like French from early age. Is that right?
Yes, but not everybody speaks French. So where I'm in, it's kind of a pretty monolingual English environment. And a lot of people have learned French up until about grade 9, 9th grade. But after that, they get rid of it. They don't really use it anymore, which is unfortunate. But I mean, yeah, I guess that's just the climate here.
Right. So you really started learning all these languages after, like, seriously, after you were, I guess, 18?
Yeah. I don't know if I can, I guess, reveal this as a secret. I didn't like French when I learned it in school. I'm not sure if it's the way it was taught or the fact that I was just in an elementary school academic environment, but I didn't start enjoying it until I was probably in university, when I was like, wow, like I know more than just my colors and how to count to 20. Like I can actually use these skills as a way to communicate with people and read books in a different language and watch videos in different languages as well. So that's when I really started to enjoy it.
Okay, so that's what like motivates you then, I guess, to learn other languages. Like it's this feeling of being able to connect with other people and cultures and
that and travel. I really enjoy traveling as well. I don't have a lot of money to travel right now, but when I do have money and I like to travel, I like to go places where they speak the languages that I'm learning, so I can practice with them.
Yeah. Another huge accountability mechanism is just like buying a plane ticket and going there and just being like, okay, I have to learn this language well, otherwise I will not be able to speak to people in French, Japanese, or whatever. Of the languages that you studied, obviously apart from English, what's your best and your worst? Just sort of curious.
Yeah, my best would be French, probably just because I've known it the longest, and Afrikaans because, well, Afrikaans, a lot of people want me to say it the native way, but I say it the honky Canadian way, would be Afrikaans because I have a lot of South African friends. I actually had one of my South African friends on my channel. His name's Phil from Johannesburg. And I'm able to speak Afrikaans with him and with my friends pretty consistently, so that's made it the strongest for me. And my weakest would be Russian, probably because I haven't been learning it that long. And also German, I love, but I know that when I speak German, I just I it's all over the place. To For me, there's a lot of rules to remember, and I haven't had enough time to practice all of them yet.
Right.
So I can get my idea across, but I just feel like my declinations, my conjugations, all that stuff just get messed up. So I can't even communicate, I feel like sometimes.
Given you clearly have a ton of like experience learning languages, and you've obviously invested a huge amount of time and effort into your YouTube channel and and your blog and all that stuff. Do you like what do you, if you could summarize it in a few sentences, like what do you think is the most important thing about learning languages? Like, because there's a lot of people out there who really want to learn languages, and who really kind of want to get started with it and would love to be able to speak another language fluently, but they just really don't know how, or how to even begin to approach it. What's your advice to those people?
Yeah. Well, I kind of have like two things, I guess, and one of them is more practical, and one of them is kind of more, I guess, like abstract.
Yeah.
So like the first thing I would say is just to be consistent. I think the hardest thing to do in this day and age, and like maybe it's the fact that we have YouTube and so many distractions and cell phones, it's just finding something you want to do and sticking to it. Whether it's language learning or like writing a novel or like, I don't know, learning how to like, I don't know, ride a tricycle or something, or not ride a unicycle. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
It's just kind of picking something and sticking to it. That's kind of been my biggest challenge, because I try and balance all these things with my regular life.
Yeah.
So kind of setting goals, I think, is important to say, okay, today I want to be able to learn how to talk about, I don't know, talk about nature in my target language or something. And then the other thing that I would say for language learning is to learn the grammar, but don't become obsessed with grammar. I think that was sort of my biggest problem being, I guess, in an academic environment, because I did learn German and Italian and, for a large extent, French in a very hyper-academic grammar environment. So grammar is important, and it helps you put the language together and make sense of it, but don't use grammar as a way to be like, oh, well, I don't know everything in grammar, so I couldn't possibly speak to somebody else. Even if you just try and you get some things wrong, it's more important to have communicated than to kind of just not spoken at all and keeping all that inside and kept all that inside of you. So those would be my two things. Be consistent, and even though grammar is important, it's not the end all and the be all. I would say that even speaking is potentially more important than being able to digest a bunch of grammar rules and spit them out again.
Right. So true, so true. To get like more specific into how you actually study languages, like to drill down into the sort of the nuts and bolts, like what does your process for learning a new language look like? Like if I told you, hey, like, let's go study Arabic for 3 months, how would you sort of start to approach that?
Yeah. Well, I would try and I would first, my most important thing, I'm a big book nerd, and I understand that this is not the method for everybody, but I find a textbook that I really, really like. I sit down with it. Hopefully it has audio CDs, or I can find YouTube videos that kind of talk about the basics of a language, and I kind of balance, that academic with the, I guess, more speaking practice. And then I'll kind of just go through the textbook. If there's a Duolingo course, I'll throw in the Duolingo course as well as good practice, even though I find some of the stock phrases a little bit unrealistic sometimes. And then I really kind of just keep to myself, and then once I feel like I have enough of a basis to a language, I might, reach out. Maybe I know somebody who speaks Arabic, or if I'm learning with a partner, I'll be like, okay, let's meet and just say, hey, how are you, over coffee in Arabic over and over and over and over again. Make it like a very usual thing, I guess, to make it more accessible in my brain.
Okay, cool. So to summarize, you get a textbook, which honestly, like that, like a lot of people, despite all the hate on textbooks, I've actually interviewed a lot of people who do say that yes, they'll like read a grammar book or something, in the beginning. Right, so you'll do some stuff in Duolingo, you'll get the basics, learn some of the grammar, and then just start going and talking to people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's ever evolving too. Like if I find that I did this with Russian. I found that my grammar textbook was too advanced for me, and I wasn't learning what I wanted to learn from it. So I kind of ditched it and picked up a new textbook. And then
Yeah.
I think when you're learning a new language, your goal should be to sort of maximize the time that you have with that language. That sounds kind of cheesy, but to sort of really be smart about your time. And if something's not working, you don't have to be chained to it. I think that might have been a mistake that I did in the beginning. I felt like, no, there's only one way to learn a language. I have to be doing it a certain way, when, really it could be fluid. It can be whatever you want it to be. If you find that you're better to learn on an audio course in your car or on the subway, that might be better for you. But for me, textbooks just happen to work, and then language, or the actual speaking part, comes a little bit after.
That's so true, and it's actually so interesting that you bring that up, because I was kind of having a similar realization recently when, like, I was sort of thinking about, like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if, like, I could develop like a step-by-step way to sort of learn, any language. Like, this is like language boot camp, and you do steps X, Y, and Z to learn any language perfectly. But it's just sort of like working out, like if you're sort of, maybe this metaphor is going to work, but like, if you're exercising, or you're lifting weights, like, one of the key things about it is you don't want to do the same thing over and over again, because if you're training too much of the same muscle, you sort of lose out on other things, and your body just kind of gets used to that work, right? So it would be as though you just did listening practice and you just memorize vocabulary all day long. If you're just memorizing vocabulary all day long, like, whenever somebody comes to actually speak with you, you're going to be like, oh, what do I say, right? So, or if you turn on the TV and you've just been memorizing vocabulary, you might get a bunch of stuff, but if you haven't really been exposed to enough of the sound, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
So definitely hear you.
Yeah, and it's not only, different learners that it's not only that we have to take into account that there are different learners for, around the world, but it also has to do with there being, somebody's coming in.
No worries.
Not only do we have to take into account that there are different learners, but each language is different. Like, my language judgment for Afrikaans, which is a pretty, and I don't mean this in an offensive way, it's a pretty grammatically poor language. There aren't a whole lot of grammar rules in Afrikaans. They've been filtered out through its evolution. My language learning regimen for Afrikaans might be completely different than it would be for Russian, because Russian is an intensely grammatical language. So to say that it's the same, it's kind of hard to do, and I think that's why being fluid is so important, like you just said.
How do you decide on a language to study? Because what I find interesting about the languages that you've studied, obviously, French is like a pretty big, and useful language, especially in Canada, but Afrikaans is a language that very few people speak. And I'm curious, like, a lot of people, pick languages. When they're picking languages, they're like, oh, I want to pick the country with the biggest GDP, or, something like that, and everybody's, like, learning Spanish and Chinese. And what is it about Afrikaans that made you really want to learn it? And when you reflect on the reasons that caused you to do that, like, do you think it was worthwhile for you to learn it? Yeah,
I do think it's worthwhile. I started really learning it because I had gone to South Africa and I fell in love with the culture. I did this big backpacking trip after I graduated university, and I went to South Africa, and the people I met and the scenery I saw, it kind of made me see the language in a different way. I always thought, like, Afrikaans is this language spoken by this minority of people on a continent I'll probably never go to because it's just so far away. And then I went there and was like, wow, like, these people exist in a world that is completely separate from mine, and they speak a language that is completely different from mine, and, like, I would have never thought about it this way if I hadn't come here. So I've been back a couple times. Like I said, I have friends who speak Afrikaans, and I realized that, like, I enjoy speaking French. I enjoy speaking German. Those are huge languages. There's lots of resources, lots of people who speak those languages, but I'm also really interested in minority languages. I've kind of touched on minority languages a little bit in my videos. I did the rarest languages of the world. Right. I do the languages of the world series where I talk about, different languages in different countries. And I think one of the saddest things for me was that the language learning community spent so much time focusing on German and Spanish and Italian and French. And that's great because those are awesome languages. Yeah. But the other languages that are even at risk of being extinct, not Afrikaans, right, but other ones, there's just not any resources for it. And then for somebody who, maybe wants to learn a minority language, like I wish I could remember his name. he came to me and he wanted to learn Hawaiian, and he was like, I can't find any resources on Hawaiian,
Yeah.
but I watched your video on Afrikaans, and it inspired me to work at finding resources and work at becoming fluent
Yeah.
in Hawaiian. And to me, that just made it worth it, Aside from my own interest in Afrikaans, I just want to, like, I don't know, it sounds kind of cheesy. I want to inspire people to go out and learn the language that they want to learn, even if it's not the most prestigious or widely spoken language. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
No, that definitely doesn't sound cheesy at all. I think, in fact, a lot of people, are inspired by your channel and your experience with learning Afrikaans to want to go and study these minority languages. I mean, I actually have a friend, this guy by the name of Jared, who I've interviewed before on my show, and he's studied he studied dozens of languages, and he speaks fluently. I think. Upwards of 10, and it's really impressive because this guy has studied languages like Greenlandic. I mean, he's now
Wow.
he's now on this kick where he studies like languages from multiple different Pacific islands. I mean, I don't even know the names of these countries, but languages where you have like 200,000 speakers, like incredibly small languages.
Yeah.
And he has this whole blog. It's really amazing where he posts facts about these, these in many cases, very endangered languages.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I find his experience there really impressive and amazing and very inspiring. Frankly, and I think I totally agree with you. I think these languages, in a lot of cases, don't get enough love, and
Yeah.
and the language is the culture, right? And if you're learning the language and you can help spread that unique culture in some small way, it's a really cool thing to do, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm only one person. Like, I can't learn every single minority language. So if I can, inspire somebody else who maybe has a connection to that minority language, maybe their family is Hawaiian or maybe their family is Greenlandic, just to be able to set that in motion, to me, that makes me successful in my, I guess, job as helping other people learn languages.
Yeah. And then, do you, to touch back on process a little bit, like what are the, you mentioned Duolingo. Are there any sort of tools that you regularly use when you're studying the language? I mean, I know you get books and grammar and sort of that sort of stuff, but does it vary for every languages? Like for every language, is there one kind of tool or a couple tools that you use with regularity across multiple languages?
Yeah, I would say the only tool I use with regularity probably is Duolingo. I've tried Memrise before.
Yeah.
I did use Flash Academy. I'm not sure if you've heard of Flash Academy. HelloTalk, I've used those apps.
Yeah.
But I think it really depends on the language. I'm trying to think of what I'm using right now for Russian. Right now, I'm using a lot of YouTube videos, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like a superhero because I found this hack to find videos in the language that I actually want to learn.
Right.
So for Russian, I've actually just started writing my titles in Russian and then feeding them to YouTube, and then I get the language results that I want. I get the videos in Russian talking about the topics I want them to talk about.
Yeah.
So I found that is something that I want to use more consistently, and that's been pretty successful for me. I have papers all over the ground here, but if I could find it, I would pull it up and show you that, I watched a video in Russian, I slowed it down to, I think it's point speed, and just, picked it apart word for word, and I found that, to be pretty helpful. I don't know, there are other apps, too. I'm trying to but Afrikaans, there were no apps. I think there were a couple websites.
Yeah.
ielanguages.com, I'm not sure if you've used that before, but that kind of was an old school resource that I used back in the day. It has sort of short language tutorials, not really any quizzes or anything like that, just more like a rundown of the way a language works.
Okay.
I'm not very tech savvy, I'm not going to lie, which is why you're the one doing the recording right now, because I know how to work my camera, I know how to work my phone, and then other than that, my language learning journey is pretty, I don't know, 1990s maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. Mostly books, I would say, with an app thrown in every now and again.
The way I think about language learning is the lower tech you can do it, the better. I mean, if you get people, in the flesh, talking with them, Stone Age technology, but it's, the best way to learn language, in my opinion.
Yeah, and of course there's italki. I guess italki's not really an
italki.
app, but something like italki
italki,
where you
yeah.
can talk to a native learner,
Yes.
I think that's more valuable than any solitary app on a phone.
It's so true, yeah. italki, Azar Live is another really good one. Hello Talk is great. You know, these apps are finding native speakers and talking with them. It's just, I think it's so key. You mentioned that you use YouTube videos to learn languages, which I find really interesting because one thing, you know, I like on YouTube, I obviously have this like analytics thing. You know, if you go into your little dashboard, you can see who like watches videos and, you know, videos and where they come from. There's a surprising amount of Brazilians who watch my channel. It's like 5% of my channel traffic is from Brazil, and I find that really strange because like, I mean, you know, yes, Brazil has a lot of people, but there's lots of other countries in the world that have, you know, a lot of people, and Brazilians, you know, English is not their native language, and I asked some Brazilians, like, and they comment a lot on my videos, and I ask them sometimes, like, why are you guys all coming to watch my channel? Like, what's the deal? It turns out that Brazilians, apparently, I don't really exactly know why, really like using YouTube to learn English. And so they'll just watch these like videos in English for their own purpose of, you know, of learning English. And that sort of really resonated with me when I heard you talk about how you use YouTube videos to learn Russian.
Yeah,
so it's really
and it's not even just for Russian. Like, I've subscribed to French YouTubers and Italian YouTubers, and just I don't know. I feel like it's a secret weapon that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
But when you find it, it's like this cornucopia of like resources that like are for free, and a lot of people spend a lot of time like Italian with Lucrezia. I can't even say her name. Lucrezia. I'm not sure if you've seen her. She literally teaches Italian on YouTube, and it's fantastic. That wasn't a sponsored shout out. She has no idea who I am, but like, it's just an example. And there are so many like that. Français avec Pierre as well. And I'm sure there are many for like all languages. I haven't explored it thoroughly, but yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's it's so cool. The YouTube community is amazing, man. And you said you slow down videos when you like watch them.
Yeah, so not every video has the feature, but on the bottom right hand, you can like click a little gear and it'll allow you.
All right, man. So, last question. What do you think is like the biggest thing that people miss in language learning? Like if there's one thing you could post on a billboard and like tell everybody who's learning any language ever, like, do not do this one thing, or please do this one thing, what would that be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I think maybe there's two things, if I can like cheat the question like a little bit.
Okay.
I would say, number one, it's not impossible. I don't know who spread this myth that like once you reach the age of 18 that you no longer can learn a language, but it's just not possible. It's not. That's not a thing.
Such
like,
nonsense.
Your brain can still learn. You can always learn. Like, I've had so many people say, "Oh, you know, like you learned so many languages. That's so cool. Like, I wish I could do that." And I'm like, "Well, why can't you?" And they're like, "But I'm too old." And I'm like, "Don't even get me started. That's not real."
Yeah.
So that like it's not impossible. It's totally 100% a thing. And number two, I think it's kind of a multi-layer thing that I would advise people to do / not do. Stay away from these kind of learn one word a day kind of scammy like language, like, oh, you know, you can learn a language in like 3 hours or something like that. Like if it's an outrageous claim, 9 times out of 10 it is outrageous.
Yeah.
I know my mom tried to learn Italian. She had a 1 word a day app.
Right.
And you know, she was convinced that this is how she was going to learn the language, but it didn't work because it was 1 word a day, and it wasn't teaching her grammar. It was just teaching her random words.
Right.
But also, if there's one thing you can do, it's definitely have a plan and try and stick to it. It sounds kind of boring for people who aren't a type A person like me, who really like scheduling and like having a list of things to do. But in the long term, I think it's more beneficial because it allows you to be, you know, to have a goal. Like if you know, I'm going to travel to Brazil, and I'm going to travel to French, and I'm going to travel to France.
Yeah.
I want to learn the language before I get there. If you can like almost map it out before then, you're way more likely to reach your goal than to just like sit down one day, be completely overwhelmed by all the resources, and then be so overwhelmed that you kind of shut down and then just never end up learning the language. So definitely make it into sort of a manageable journey and make it into something that is attainable to you, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Totally. Yeah, it totally does. That was awesome, dude. Cool. Well, that's all I've got. Where can people find you on social media, on the YouTubes?
You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/the Polyglot Files. I don't know my social media accounts. They're somewhere. They're either at the Polyglot Files or at Polyglot Files or something like that. I guess, I don't know. If you go to the YouTube channel, you'll find stuff there. And there's also my website, www.thepolygglotfiles.com. I don't update it as much as I should, but I'm trying to update it more. So if you go there, maybe you'll find like new stuff. Potentially, who knows?
Sweet. Well, if you're going there for the first time, there's a ton of new stuff. So be sure to go there and subscribe and check out Michael's channel and blog. 'Cause they're really awesome and you can learn so much stuff from them. Well, cool, man. Have a good day. Hope your cold gets a little better. But really appreciate it, dude.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks. Bye.